by Yavapai County Master Gardeners. We are part of the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. Every county in Arizona has a cooperative extension, and you may be familiar with some of our other programs such as 4-H, food safety, nutrition education, STEM and commercial horticulture, and small acreage support. Master Gardeners provide science-based horticultural information, and tonight's presentation is on Jumpstart Your Spring Garden. Our presenter is Tricia Michelson. She is a die-hard veggie gardener, certified as a Master Gardener in 2013, and is currently the chairperson of the Master Gardener Speakers Bureau. Believing that gardening is a continual experiment, Tricia takes on new gardening challenges each year, and she grows vegetables both inside her home as well as outside, and loves sharing the joy of gardening through public speaking engagements. Welcome, Tricia. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I am delighted to see we've got so many people here tonight. I was telling some of the folks that when I was pulling this together, I noticed that I first did this presentation in 2015. There's no new news in how you start your garden.
You're muted, Tricia.
Oh my goodness. I had yelled at my dog. So tonight we're going to talk about the 10 steps to a successful vegetable garden. And this is actually modeled after one of our fabulous University of Arizona brochure or bulletins that we have. I believe it's 1435. We'll see that at the end. So this information, if you don't take good notes, it's all online in a presentation as well. It's a really nice bulletin that's been put together. And if you follow these steps, it's really hard to have a black thumb. Your green thumb should pop out. So we'll talk about location, garden layouts, recommended varieties, obtaining good seeds, all about your plants and equipment, how to prepare and care for your soil, planting your vegetables properly, irrigation, mulching, cultivating those weed things. We've got pests up here, so we have to look out for those. And then also about harvesting. So let's get started. The very first thing you want to do when you're planning your garden is you want to select a good location. And up here, I say it's really important because we have great sun, but our morning sun isn't always as good for some of our summer vegetables as our afternoon sun, which can sometimes be hot. So look for a place with all that morning sunlight and possibly a little afternoon shade. There's some plants that can take it full on. Your tomatoes oftentimes can take it full on. Your squash, they're really good. Your greens are not going to be happy in that full sun. So look at what you're going to plant and where you're going to get your sunlight. Now, the vegetables that create fruits, they like that 6 to 8 full hours of sun exposure. And because we're up north here, we have lots of trees. So you don't want to plant under or near your trees. And think about large shrubs, because your large shrubs are going to be providing a lot of shade potentially. We do have a lot of new people coming to our area, and they may not realize this because they're new to that yard. You also want to have a convenient source of watering, because adequate watering is really, really important.
Tricia, you may want to start your slide from the beginning, because we're just your slide presentation. It's not started from the beginning as far as the slideshow.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to stop my share to do this.
Okay.
Be right back. We'll just go through the steps and hope it works.
There we go.
Okay, let's see if you can see the second one.
Yep.
Okay, we're on this one. This is the slide I just went through, except for my favorite part of this slide. Notice it says rotate your crops. And a long time ago, I learned how important this was, and it comes up to me every time I sit on the help desk for the master gardeners in the summer. Invariably, I will have someone call and they'll say, my area for tomatoes, I've always planted them here and I'm getting really awful tomatoes. And I'll say, well, do you rotate plants through there? Oh no, I've got the best space in the world for my tomatoes. Well, I'm sorry, you really need to rotate your crops. And so I like this rotation cycle. It's root, fruit, green, bean, and that would be one season per vegetable. So if you're just a summer gardener, it would be, that summer season for root, and then the next season, summer, it would be fruit. But some of you actually do grow multi-seasons up here. So it's, if you're a spring grower and you pull stuff out, you've maybe got spinach and cauliflower in the early spring, and you might put, I don't know, carrots there in the summer, that would be two separate seasons. So take a note of that. This will pop up again, and you're going to understand a little bit more of why this is so important. But rotating crops is very necessary for successful gardening. Now, planning your garden layout is also important, and it actually goes back to some of that rotation. You want to be able to sketch the plan of where you intend to plant so that each successive year, you know what you had in that spot before. And after you've got that laid out and you've got your plan and sketched out, you need to decide on what vegetables you want to plant. Now, are you going to plant from seed, or are you going to start with plants? That's something else, because it all goes into your timing. So determine when it's most advantageous to plant each type of vegetable. And I'm going to share with you some information depending on where you are in the county and what your altitude is, what plants go in the ground at what time. And we also have handouts already online for you documenting this. Now, all this information you want to put in your gardening notebook. Now, for me, I don't like notebooks. I don't like to have to store them, but I've always sketched it out, thrown it somewhere, and consistently over the years put those plans in the same place. So every year I pull it out and I look, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what I did last year. It really comes in handy. So if you're a great journaler and somebody who can keep that notebook, great. If not, just keep those sketches somewhere in your gardening group, your gardening area. Now, here is, this is a copy of my garden journal. Part of what you all didn't hear when I was muted was I've been doing this talk since 2015, a long time ago. That's 7 years. And this was probably the garden journal I was using back then. But you want to know some things about your plants, how long they take to germinate, how long they're typically going to take to harvest, where you planted them, very important. And then, because I like to have things organized, I like to know, when am I putting my seeds outside? Am I starting them inside? And then I track when they sprout. I never track my harvest date. I've got the column, I've always had it. I don't track that. It's just like, when they're ready, they're ready. But have some kind of a garden journal. And this was actually my original garden layout. You can tell I didn't hand sketch it. I did it in Excel, but I just threw the backyard together. You can do it as simple as hand sketching, or you can get a little fancier. I have graduated to an actual online garden system that will show me my garden plots. So as I add new planters, and I do everything in raised beds, or big, huge pots, or horse troughs. But as I've added new places to plant, I've been able to add it to that. It might be good to sketch out your first one and make a copy of it. Take a picture with your phone and print it off so that you have some basis for starting the next year. Now, up here in the Yavapai County, especially in the Prescott area, we say our normal garden vegetable planting time is Mother's Day. Well, this year, as you can see, Mother's Day is on the 8th of May. That's a little bit early. And the reason is, if you look to the bottom of the half of the screen, you'll see the Prescott spring freeze dates and the probabilities, and the Cottonwood spring freeze dates and probabilities. So it's whether it's over in the Verde Valley or in the Prescott side of the mountains. And as you can see, May 8th in Prescott, there's still a 70% chance that we're going to have a 32-degree freeze, hard freeze. Over in the Verde Valley, it's a pretty safe bet by May 8th. They're fine. So I'm pretty much guessing they're going to be planting much, much earlier, probably somewhere around the late April timeframe in here, because their freezes are gone and we're still a little bit higher. So temperature and freezing is something you really do have to watch, and it's what predicates when you plant outside. Now, that doesn't mean you're not starting your seeds inside much, much earlier if you're doing inside planting. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is a chart that comes out of that 10 steps to successful gardening. And it's for altitude. So this one is for 4,500 to 6,000 feet. And I've annotated it just a bit, and this will be what your handouts will look like. I've added frost tolerant versus frost susceptible because there's a large number of plants that can tolerate frost. It's better if you've covered them with frost cloth in most cases, but they will tolerate it. They will live. Some of them will be happy and regale the frost. I have a spinach plant that I left in last year, and I've just done nothing with it. And it has lived through all the weather we've had so far, and it's still producing green leaves. So go figure, it hasn't cared that we have had snow. It's been happy. But there's some that are frost susceptible, and they will not tolerate it at all. So I have specifically designated for you those different vegetables so you can make your choices accordingly. Now, it's really good to grow recommended varieties. Something that you might have grown back in Pennsylvania or in SoCal may not really work well here. And it's often influenced by your plant variety. So seek knowledge from people. The Master Gardeners have a tomato survey we do every year, and we post it on our website. And so you can go out there and see different tomato varieties that have been very successful. We've been really testing a lot of dwarf varieties the last year or so. And so we're always introducing new varieties that we find that work well up here. Ask the different nurseries, ask your garden groups, ask around to what does well. And each year, try a new variety or so. I'm not the biggest tomato eater, but tomatoes are so easy. You always have to have tomatoes. And I did 2 last year that I was just delighted with. A black cherry tomato, and then also a chocolate Tasmanian dwarf, which really didn't turn out to be a dwarf. It produced pretty large tomatoes, but they were both wonderful varieties, and those were both new for me. So part of those experiments that Lauren said I like to do. You also want to obtain good seed. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think that the grocery store varieties are always the best. They'll mostly grow, but they're not always the best place. So you can get them from seed catalogs. You can save seeds. You can check locally. We do have, actually, we have some seed companies locally. So in some of our areas, you can actually find some of those seed companies. Terroir is one of them. And there are places here locally that sell those seeds. When you're purchasing plants, because I know there's some of you that just say, I'm not going to do seeds. When you're purchasing plants, there are some things you want to look out for. You want to look out for plants that have been wilted. They might have spots in their leaves. They might have brown spots. They might just look wimpy. They might look overgrown. I'm really bad when I go into a store to buy a plant. See me in a big box store, you're usually going to see me turning the pot upside down, pulling it up and seeing if it's root bound underneath. Shame on me. But I don't want a root bound plant. So I'm looking for that. I'm also looking for those nasty insects, because if you bring them home, you're going to infect your house and your yard with those. It's really horrible when you bring them in the house, because if you do, they often infect your house, but they're also going to infect your yard. Your equipment and supplies, most people don't think about it, but you do need to clean that equipment. If you use seed containers from the year before for planting, that's perfectly fine, but it should be cleaned with bleach. It doesn't have to be scrubbed and all the dirt out of it. It just needs to be rinsed off in a solution of bleach and water, about 1/4 cup of bleach to about 1/4 cup's probably a lot, to a gallon of water, and just rinse it out. It will sterilize it. Your tools, as you use them, should always be sterilized. So if you're out cutting even your vines and things, you should be sterilizing those after. And again, a bleach solution is really the best thing to do. The other thing you want to be looking for is mulches and fertilizers. And I'm not going to get into the goods and bads on that. We'll talk some more about that, but that is also considered part of your supplies you're going to need. Now, if you plant in ground, there's some plants that adore that. Root vegetables, it's imperative that you plant it in the ground. Lettuce prefers to be planted in ground, the seeds in ground. Spinach, corn, watermelon and pumpkin, you can go either way, but they'll grow in ground directly or from a pre-planted. And onions also like to be planted in ground. Now, anything you buy in a nursery can be transplanted. So if you see something in a nursery, you can pretty much figure you can start it from seed as well. But broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, eggplant, peppers, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, those can all be started inside early. And you can probably already tell from the chart that I have, I do lots and lots of charts. I look for time groupings that I can plant. So I might start broccoli early and cabbage and cauliflower, because those are things that like cooler weather. And eggplant and peppers and tomatoes, they like the warmer weather. So I'll start them a little bit later. I'm actually getting ready right now. Tomatoes take so long, I'll probably be starting them pretty soon, but they'll stay in the house for a very long time. Same with peppers. Eggplant tends to grow pretty fast. On your new gardens, you have to think about your soil, especially up here, because some places, some areas, we have very nice, rich soil. There's some beautiful soil over in Camp Verde. There's actually some really nice soil in Chino and Paulden as well. But a lot of our soil is just DG and clay. And so you might have to add some good mineral topsoil, something that's got good decayed organic material in it. And that's something that you'd be looking for well before you're even thinking about planting a plant. You want to get that soil ready. You want to be careful. There's some soil that you can buy that comes from the bottom of the lake. It's really great, rich soil, but it's also very, very heavy in clay. And I've used that a lot in my gardens, and I've had to then get a lot of decayed material to put in it to loosen it up, because it becomes absolutely as hard as a rock the following year. In your existing gardens, you just need to turn the soil, get it loosened up, mix in some good decomposed material in the first 10 to 12 inches. That's way deep enough. Most of our roots don't go down that far, and if they do, the plants are actually going to force their way through. So for the most part, they're not going much deeper than 6 to 8 inches in most cases, where you have to have that great soil. When you're doing existing gardens, it's also great to put in some worm compost, some of my favorite, if you heard my talk on worms. That will also be really good for the soil. And if you put in fertilizer, you may need to wait as long as 1 to 2 months for some of the harmful salts to leach through the soil. So you want fully aged manure if you get it. And if you do, you really want to wait a minimum of 4 weeks so that it has time to age in the soil. You can also make your own soil. And I am so sorry about the dog. Wait, you had time now to write down the square foot gardening mix. I've done this a number of times, and it is a mess, but it makes really great soil to start out with. And it's not truly soil, it's gardening mix. Let's get it right. I don't want to confuse you there. It's a mix of blended composts, and you want to find as many different types of composts as you can. So you might have some cow manure that's been composted. You might have some mushroom compost. You might have some chicken. You might have really good organic leaves and material that you've composted yourself. There can be all sorts of things. You want to mix that, about a third of that, with a third of peat moss. You can also use coconut coir if you want, which is the shell, outside shell of the coconut, and it's sold in stores. And then a third coarse vermiculite. When you put that all together, it's very fluffy, but the compost makes it like soil, and it gives your plants lots of food. So that's an excellent thing to do, but it's time consuming. It's a little expensive. It's hard to get enough vermiculite unless you go buy it in these ginormous bags. I bought ginormous bags at a packing store in South Phoenix years ago, and I still have some, and that was the only way I could find it cheap enough to make it affordable to buy. But it's a fun experiment. It's good to do. Now, out in your yard, potting soil is not recommended. Potting soil, the normal potting soil we find around here is for pots. It's not for your large garden pots like I do the raised gardens. It really doesn't handle up well, so it's not recommended. Now, fertilizing, I did say we'd talk about this. I'm not going to talk about the benefits or Disadvantages of types of fertilizers. Some people prefer to go organic, some people don't. It's your preference. But you should find certain types of things that are going into the soil. So before you plant, your typical fertilizer would be a 16-20-0, which is more of an ammonium phosphate. And that gets dug way through the soil. It's not a top dress, it goes way through. After planting, you want to just top dress with just your typical, again, whatever type you choose to buy, just around. Mulch is good enough. In most cases, you don't have to give it a lot of fertilizer to get them going. During the growing season, as they grow, as they're getting leaves, as they're getting flowers, as they're getting fruit, that's when you really want to start your fertilization. And it's important to fertilize. I, a number of years, tried to stay away from it altogether. And there's just not enough in our soil, enough nutrients in the soil. So fertilization, whatever product you choose to use, is very important. Great, now my computer is stuck. Oops, there we go. Okay, starting your seeds for transplanting. If you're going to be a crazy person like me and do seeds, you have to calculate, as I said, when you're going to be transplanting them, and then you back up. So if you're going to choose, let's say May 15th, because middle of May is usually good if you're in the Prescott area. So you have to back up on how long it's going to take. Now, all of your seed packets will tell you about how long it takes for a plant to germinate and grow, and oftentimes tell you when you're going to have, when you can expect fruit. So some plants you're going to plant in successive planting. So like your lettuces, for example, bok choys, Swiss chard, those are going to be planted in successive plantings. So you would start the same thing if you're going to be transplanting them. A lot of times for those kinds of things, your first ones are started inside and your subsequent ones are started outside, right in the beds. You need to decide the number of seeds to plant because you want to allow for non-germinating seeds. I usually put between 2 and 3. If it's an old packet of seeds, an old, I would call it 2013. So a 9 to 10-year-old packet of seeds for me is starting to get kind of old. I will allow usually 3 to 4 on those old ones. A new packet of seed, I'll always put 2 seeds in. I hate to say it, but when you put 2 and you get 2, you have to cut 1 because you can't separate those 2 little seeds. It's just, even if you are successful in pulling it out to plant it in something else, you're going to be pulling some of those very small roots off of it, and you're going to be doing a disservice to the plant. So it's better just to clip it off and let that one, as it's growing, flourish. Now, seeds don't need soil. They need something that's very light. And they also don't need fertilizing while they're starting and germinating. So you really want to use a seed starting mix. You don't have to, but it helps the germination process. It helps seeds that struggle. And there are many seeds that do struggle getting up. Watermelon seed is not one that struggles at all. A lot of cherry tomatoes struggle. You can make your own seed starting mix from, I've got it here on the screen, 4 parts of screened compost, 1 part of perlite, 1 part of vermiculite, and 2 parts of the coir. And that will make a very light, fluffy mix. And when you're starting them inside, that's all you really need. You don't need much. And typically, when you start inside, you're going to be starting in small containers. So figure you're probably going to have to put it in something a little bit bigger before you plant it out in the garden. And when you do that, it's okay to use a potting mix that you're going to use outside at that point. All these things we're talking about starting them in, your peat pots, your trays, your cans, everything you want to make sure is clean. And plant according to the seed packet instructions. And water. Water is really important in getting them started, but too much water will drown your seeds. In today's world, when I first did this presentation, we didn't have a lot of fancy seed starting kits. You're going to see them all over in the markets, in the stores, the big box stores, the nurseries, online. There's lots of seed starting kits, and they have covers, plastic covers that go over it. Well, believe it or not, a piece of plastic wrap put over it will do just fine, because as soon as the seed comes up, that's all you really needed. It's good to keep the area that you're planting warm. Top of the fridge, water heater, close to your oven, or on a seedling mat. You don't have to buy the seedling mats. I tested it a couple years ago. I had 2 identical boxes of 48 seeds each. I did one on a seed mat, one without a seed mat. And the seed mat did germinate faster, I will say that. But when they got to a certain point, both of them, they grew at the same rate. So that the important part of the heat seems to be in that initial first couple weeks. It will get them going faster, but they ultimately all end up the same size. And as I said, thin the plants. I can't tell you how many people have just said, I don't want to kill them. You have to kill them. You have to kill those extra plants. Now, when your seedlings have, excuse me, your second pair of leaves in your flats, you can move them to their own individual containers. Excuse me. Something that will invariably happen is there will be a fungusy mold that might appear on the soil. And I found that you can spray that with using a pint of water and 4 to 5 tablespoons of hydrogen peroxide. It disappears. It just goes away. The hydrogen peroxide does not hurt your plants at all, and it will get rid of that mold. I have left that fungusy mold on, and the weaker plants have succumbed to it, and the stronger ones survive. So don't think it's necessarily going to kill your plants, but I like to just spray it and get it over and done and get rid of it. So when you're direct seeding into your garden, you want to have some organization plan to it, because you're going to have to go back and know what seeds are coming up. And so you want to plan in straight rows. Typically, you want to have spots, areas that you're going to plant. It's really hard to see all those seeds on the ground when you're putting them out there. So one suggestion that has been used for a long time is to lay toilet paper out and put the seeds on the toilet paper and then cover the seeds up right on the toilet paper. The toilet paper disintegrates pretty darn quickly in the soil. Your seed roots have no problem going through it. And that way you can have a nice, easy dispersion. Your rule of thumb is that the depth should be about 4 times the diameter of the seeds. But again, I'm going to say refer to the seed packet. The seed packet typically will tell you plant it 1/4 of an inch, plant it 1/8 of an inch, 1/2 an inch. And there are some very small seeds that just need to be dusted lightly with soil. I have some seeds that a seed packet I read the other day, and it said Don't put any soil on it, just leave it on top. Okay, it was an herb of some sort. And when you cover the seeds, you want to tamp the soil that you're putting back on top of them gently. You don't want to smash them. You're not looking to compact it. You want to leave it lightly tamped down. And then again, it's important to irrigate and moisten that soil. And again, thin. Now, one thing I didn't mention when we were talking about starting seeds inside is it really helps to get your planting mix wet ahead of time. And so I typically get it all moist the day before and make sure that I've got moist all the way through, because the one thing bad about those very light mixes is they tend not to absorb water as fast. But once they do, they retain it usually for quite a while. But it's good to get it moist ahead of time. So then transplanting those babies that you've grown inside your house outside, you need to harden off the plant before you take it out and put it in the ground. And hardening off means getting it outside, and it can take anywhere from 3 to 5 days to harden off. Take it outside in a very protected area the first day, and you might leave it out for only 2 hours. It might be on your patio. It's somewhere where it's going to be protected. We have tremendous winds in the springtime, and you don't want them to be getting the wind that very first day. The next day, you might take it out and leave it out all day on the patio. And I'm going to give you the long road. You can shorten it if you want. The next day, you're going to take it out and put it outside of the patio where it's going to start getting some of that wind. It's going to feel the motion. It's going to feel the sun. It's going to start absorbing that, oh, this is a different world I'm living in, because your plants really do know this. And the next day, each day you're bringing them back to their inside safe spot. The next day, you might take it on the patio and leave it, out in the sun, bring it back to the patio and leave it in the patio overnight. And the last day, that 5th day, take it out to where it's going to sit and leave it out all day. And if it makes it all day and looks good, it's ready to be planted. Now you can re-change that any way you want. You can shorten it to 2 or 3 days. But hardening off, especially up here, is really important. It's better to transplant on a cloudy day or in the evening, just because the day heats up and there's a lot of motion and things going on if you plant in the morning. Usually something that's cloudy, it's not as shocking to your plant. Before you transplant them, you want to thoroughly water them so that they're good and moist when you put them in the ground. Obviously, you're going to handle them with care. They're your babies. And if you've got a whole line of plants and you've taken them out of the container, you want to make sure you're re-moistening those roots. When you dig the hole for your transplant, it needs to be a little bit larger and a little bit deeper than your container. If you're planting tomatoes, you actually want to plant the tomatoes down, the stem in the ground. It's one of those strange plants. I've done it to some others, but it's a known planting method with tomatoes that you plant it down, and your stems will grow an even better root system for your plant. It can help if you use a starter solution. One that was recommended that I read was get a soluble fertilizer high in phosphorus. So 10-52-18, obviously the 52 and the 50 are the phosphorus. That will give a little extra boost. You're going to see some things on the market that hype up their ability to improve your plants. Use those carefully. There are some people that will swear by it, and there's some people that won't. We look for scientific solutions as a master gardener. So I tend to stay away from those. But a fertilizer high in phosphorus definitely will help. And you would put that solution in the hole ahead of planting and let it go into the ground around. I can't say this loudly enough. If you're using peat or fiber pots, or I've taken to using, sometimes I'll use toilet paper rolls as pots. You want to break all that excess material off. If you've got part of the peat pot out of the ground, when you put it in the ground, it's going to wick all the water away from your plant. And you'll wonder why your plant looks so bad. And it will be because the water isn't getting to it, because it's actually evaporating right back into the air. So without tearing your roots, I try to tear as much of those away as I can. And when you do plant it, it goes without saying, get all your roots in the soil. Sometimes you're going to have a plant that has really long roots, and you don't want any of those sticking out of the ground. In some cases, it's necessary to protect your plants from the sun or the wind. And up here, more likely, if you're planting early, you're going to have to protect them from the cold. So if you're planting any time before the middle of May, you probably want to do an investment in some frost cloth, and then watch the weather, because there's nothing more disheartening than to have gone through all this work, gotten them in the ground, only to see them tapped off from freezing or excessive cold. Irrigation is really important in your garden. You want to water enough to keep it moist, but you don't want it wet. Typically, you need to water when the soil on the top becomes too crumbly. If it's dry on the top, it's okay. Put your finger in the ground and see if it's moist down there. You can use a spade or a probe to determine it. I've got moisture probes I use all the time, and I stick them down several inches. As the plant gets bigger, the water needs to be deeper. But when you're sprouting, the whole thing needs to be moist because the seed needs water. As the plant grows, you need to increase your water period because the roots go deeper, so the water needs to be deeper. So if you've got a sprinkler timer, you will be adjusting that during the summer. As it gets warmer and the plants get bigger, there's need for more irrigation. Sometimes I start my plants in the spring with just one water in the morning, and by midsummer I am watering twice, once in the morning, once in the mid to late afternoon. You never want to water in the evening because it encourages disease growth. And your shallow veggies need water more often. And so cabbage, onions, lettuce, corn, they all need more water because their root systems are really shallow. So they're dissipating faster. I always laugh when I see this. Weeds, bad. Weeds bring insects. They bring diseases. Sometimes they're very low. We have a lot of ground cover type weeds up here. So they don't look bad, but they're still important to pull out. So you should spend some time doing some weeding just to keep away the insects and the diseases. Now, there are some things that look like weeds that aren't, and those are cover crops. So they actually control weeds. So you can put mulching on to control weeds. I'm not a fan of of the plastic mulching. Just don't tend to like that. Cover crops are a wonderful thing. You can use leaves, sawdust, wood chips, cardboard, newspaper, shredded paper. All of those are great. I've used all in different ways. I've used actually cardboard rings around plants before. Those can help with some of the insects as well. Getting out there with a hoe or a cultivator, just as they're starting to sprout, the weeds sprout, you can scrape the soil with the sharp hoe, and it actually kills them in the process, and you haven't had to do a lot of weeding and getting rid of it. And those little weeds actually go back and give a little nitrogen to your soil. And you can scrape the surface of the soil. When you're doing all this, it's also a good time to think about, should I be fertilizing? It's kind of a timely thing to think about. So pest problems. You have to think about it. If you ignore your plants, your pest won't. So it's really a good idea to keep a close eye on your plants for insects and disease. And then you want to treat it right away. Those nasty tomato worms, if you find you're losing a lot of leaves, if you go pick those tomato worms off and smash them or feed them to the birds or just get rid of them, your plants will be healthy. But it only takes a day, and they can kill a plant like overnight. You want to select disease-resistant varieties, and you can tell that because it's written on your seed package. And here's my other time to say this: rotate your crops. Believe it or not, I don't know how, but there's some kind of genealogy in the pests that know if you plant a tomato in the same place year after year, it knows to go back there year after year. If you move them around, somehow you confuse them. So it just pays to rotate those crops, get different things in. Also, the roots of your plants can leave behind different diseases and things, and you never get everything out. So just know that rotating is going to give that soil an opportunity. When you plant beans, you're actually planting a legume, which does a nitrogen fixing in your soil. So it's great. It's going to fix some of your problems. But if you haven't rotated, it won't fix it. So trust me, do it. And finally, step 10 is harvest at peak quality. Your vegetables are usually best only for a short period of time. There's a lot of vegetables that do not improve after harvest. There are some that do. Tomatoes happen to be one that can ripen over time. But most vegetables that we have need to be harvested when they're ready. And then you have to take care of them. Harvesting is best done in the morning. It's best done early before the day heats up, because your plant changes, the fruit, actually the vegetable changes during the day. And it's in life-saving mode in the summer afternoon. And in the morning, it's all fresh and lively and ready to go for the day. So where you can harvest in the morning, be careful of what you do with it. Know what you can leave on your counter, like your tomatoes. Know what you need to store at proper temperatures. You want to have your asparagus, your broccoli, your leafy vegetables, your peas, and your sweet corn cold. They want 40 degrees. So those are going to be going right in. Peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, tomatoes. A lot of these I've left on my countertop for a while. If your house is warm, probably good to get them in the fridge. Tomatoes, I never put a tomato in a fridge. So learn those proper storage temperatures, learn about that harvest. And some of learning is just learning your house and how your house environment works. Think back to the old days. There weren't a lot of vegetables that got put into the refrigerator. In wrap up, remember that there's a long lead time from seed to plant, and long can be up to 2 months. That's why a lot of us are getting our tomatoes ready in the next week. March is a great time to start a lot of your inside vegetables. Get your starts growing inside, and remember, harden them off. You've worked so hard on them. Give them success. Start your seeds earlier than Mother's Day. Your green manures, those composts, those leaves, they can all add extra layers of protection in our summer. And we didn't talk about these, but you can use season extenders for in-ground spring plants. So if you start some things inside right now, your broccoli, you can plant your broccoli outside in April. You can plant it outside in March. You just have to possibly cover it with those frost cloths I was talking about. And last but not least, all of this material was taken from the 10 steps to a successful vegetable garden. It's on the Yavapai County Agricultural Extension website, which I believe has been put in the chat box. And in the search box for bulletins, you would put AZ 1435-2015. And there might be a letter on the end of it now. I think there's a B or something on the end of it because they did update it. But you can find all this information. And don't forget this will have the list of when to plant. The ones that we put out on the web are the ones that I did that talks about what's frost tolerant versus frost sensitive. So with that, we're all done. And I don't have the last page. Oh, bad Trisha. Lauren, do we have any questions?
We do. And I'm trying to start my video, but it just doesn't want to go on. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We see you.
So the first one is not a question, but it's from Linda Guy and says, yay for chocolate Tasmanian dwarf. And I agree with her because I got one of those from the plant sale and it was delicious. It looks like a chocolate tomato and it's very robust.
Yes,
so,
it is.
Billy asked, if you use animal manure in a vegetable garden, how do you protect against E. coli?
The animal that you're going to use has to be specific. You'd never use your dogs or cats. You don't use any house, any pet type animal. We're talking barnyard animal. The E. coli is protected best by, you're not putting it on the actual plant, it's going into the ground, and it's also been composted or aged. And as you compost and age, those things burn off. So, but you never want to spray fertilizer of compost on, you don't want to spray it on your plants. You don't want to spray it on your vegetables. And this goes back, thank you for the question too. It goes back to when you harvest, you always want to wash your vegetables well, and you can't wash them in hot water, obviously. So what do you wash them in? You wash them in a mixture of plain water and cider vinegar or just regular white vinegar. You leave them in that water. If you leave them in 10 minutes, it's going to kill any bad bacteria. And I got that from a lady that works for the extension down in Yuma, who had worked out in the fields actually, and she's I believe an agent, and she says it'll take care of the E. coli. So
okay, this is not specific to your presentation, but it's in the list of questions. And somebody wanted to know about the BAT presentation in January and they couldn't find a link to it. I just want to say that the BAT presentation, we had technical difficulties, and in March 22nd, we will be presenting the BAT presentation again. So please stay tuned for more information.
Yes, Lauren's going to do the BAT presentation in March.
Hold on, I'm trying to get through this here. What is your irrigation system like? That's from Bill Maines.
I have your typical, well, now I have your typical stringed drip system, and I have to every single pot, I have a drip. I have emitters that I can adjust the flow because every plant doesn't need the same flow. I'm probably going to be changing back to one that I used to use in some of my irrigation, which was using PVC pipe with holes, and I would extend from that the tubing. I try to get the water as close to the plant as I can because I don't run them for long periods of time. And I do have everything on a timer. Anything that I can't, that's in pots where I can't get the irrigation to it, I'm a diligent hand waterer, I hate to say.
So you don't take a lot of vacations.
Well, something that I do, I learned this from doing it on inside gardens, is you can use, I do have several outside planters that are self-waterers, and there's a number of places online you can find directions for making your own self-watering kits. I've also used very successfully in pots, liter bottles that Coke or seltzer came in, turned upside down in a spigot that goes in the ground, and you screw it in. When it's turned upside down, you flip it over and it will water over time. So I've used those too when I go away.
Okay. Robert asked, I found my soil to be very alkaline after testing. Acidifier made a huge difference, especially for tomatoes. You didn't mention this. How important for Sedona gardeners?
You need to test your soil and find out. I say test it once a year, and because your soil changes over time. So that's a very good question. As you improve your soil, it's going to stay improved longer. So it's not just Sedona, it's good everywhere to test and then fertilize and enhance it accordingly.
Okay. Larry said, thanks for the grouped version of the planting dates as opposed to alphabetical list. It's very helpful. And Barbara said, the bulletin is dated 2015. Is it still relevant, or will there be a new one?
There won't be a new one. They updated the bulletin. This is basic information. And I don't know, because I don't know who all of you are. I saw a lot of wonderful names I didn't know. Everybody's going to be at a different place in their gardening. So this particular presentation and this bulletin is to give you the foundational information for starting a basic garden. There's so many other things that I would want to throw in, but this was only an hour talk, and we do respect your time. So yes, this material is good from now till the end of time.
And Linda asked, strategies for grasshoppers?
Must be some,
and especially the big ones.
I don't know which Linda, but
Linda Guy.
It is Linda Guy. Well, you're in practically my neighborhood, Linda. I just kill them. Find your favorite insecticide and spray them, irritate them.
I blast them with water.
Huh?
I blast them with
I
water.
blast them with water because I don't use insecticides, or I use something that's very non-toxic. And they're just going to stick out their tongues and spray their nasty spray and go on and do their thing. Linda, just be thankful you don't live in Paulden, where they're big enough to walk your dog for you.
And I have a question. I have one of my raised beds is dedicated to strawberries. So it's and the plants, I cover it during the winter. And so they don't produce, but they diminish, but they're all alive, and I thin it in spring, but I'm not rotating it. So what's my issue?
You don't really have an issue with your perennials. There's nothing you can do. So as long as you're properly caring for the soil.
Okay, and I add compost and
Yes.
topsoil. Okay.
Yes. When we're talking rotation, we're talking annual plants, and I thank you for that, because I'm clarifying it. I rotate plants through my perennial beds. So I have a perennial bed of strawberries and asparagus, and I've also got boysenberries in there. But I plant other things in there. So the other things that I plant are annuals, and I will rotate those through that bed.
Okay. And one thing I wanted to add, because I've been doing some lecture series, we talked about companion planting in not here, but in some other series. And I learned that if you plant like onions or garlic or chives amongst your roses, that they will keep aphids away. And I started doing that this last year, and it seemed to work because of the smell.
And I read, and I'm going to test it this year because I'm an investigative planter. I've heard that cilantro interplanted will do the same thing on aphids. So
And it gives a nice ground cover underneath your roses.
Well, and you need to successive plant cilantro anyway.
Yep.
So I think that will be a fun thing, and come back to one of our videos next year and you guys can say, did it work? How did it go? So any more questions?
We have a lot of thank yous, Tricia, for all your information you provided. And
Thank you.
Again, remember, this will be posted on the extension.arizona.edu/yavapai/ and along with the PowerPoint. And we look forward to seeing you in 1 month for bats.